G'day, g'day. Welcome out there in internet land, wherever you are. My name's Charlie McGee, and this is my ukulele. And I'm very excited today to be hosting this very special launch of two amazing things. But first, I just want to acknowledge the country we're on, which is Djawarung Jara country here in central Victoria. And the things we're launching today, Our Street and the Permaculture action cards, are both based on the ethics and principles of permaculture, which, if you've heard of it, you might know that it's about earth care, people care and fair share. And it draws heavily on a lot of traditional knowledge from our ancestors and traditional people around the world, including Indigenous people from here and everywhere. And it's our hope that we can use these concepts to create an even better world that we can all feel more connected to the place where we live and everyone around us. So that's what we're here today to launch. Our Street is based on the book Retro Suburbia by David Holmgren, and this is a kid's iteration of the Aussie Street story in that book. It's a ridiculously colourful, fun story through time, and we're going to take you through it in a second. And the permaculture action cards are from, myself and Brenna Quinlan, the illustrator of Our Street, and they're another whole kettle of fish in themselves. But for now, I'm going to save you on the talk, and I'm going to take you to my band Formidable Vegetable, which I'm very excited about because we haven't seen each other in 6 months. So we've gotten back together with a new song all about Our Street. I'll see you out there.
Hi! Who are you?
I'm Mel Webb.
Oh.
He's getting into the rural vibe.
The rural vibe.
The rural vibe.
And who are you?
Oh, I'm Kylie Morgan.
Oh, hello, and I'm Charlie McGee. And together we are Formidable Vegetable. Together at last,
Yay!
here at Melliodora for the Our Street launch.
Yay!
And for the first time ever, on stage, live, I hope, yes, last time I checked, we're going to play our brand new Our Street song, written specifically in honour of the new book, Our Street, which I hope you're all going to read because it's really good. So here it is, Our Street. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Our street's a radish neighborhood. We planted every seed we could so it would let us turn up all the beans. We sent our roots deep underground and new ideas bloomed all around. We're all digging, living on our street. We're the goats and chickens, bees and birds and fruit grown on the trees. We're not perfect, but we do have everything we need. Milk and honey, vegetables, so many tasty trees. It's all right here, growing on our street. Well, we started off by baking bread and turned out baking bricks instead. The chickens reckon we're out of control. Fixed up old and rusty bikes, now we cycle where we like. Getting by for free is how we roll. We're the goats and chickens, bees and birds and fruit growing on the trees. We're not perfect, but we do have everything we need. Milk and honey, vegetables, so many tasty trees. It's all right here, growing on our street. Well, our garden's now immense, 'cause we pulled down the fence. Well, that might sound intense, but we're friends with common sense. Well, there's goats and chickens, bees and birds and fruit grown on the trees. We're not perfect, but we do have everything we need. Milk and honey, vegetables, so many tasty trees. It's all right here, growing on our street. Hey, well, goats and chickens, bees and birds and fruit grown on tasty treat. It's all right here, growing on our street. Well, there's so much goodness growing on our street. Let's come on and let's all grow it on our street. Yay! Thank you. We'll see you soon. Woohoo!
Woohoo! Middle Village!
What a great band.
Hi.
Fantastic. I'm David Holmgren, the co-originator of Permaculture and the author of Retro Suburbia. And these are my collaborators, Beck Lowe and Brenna Quinlan.
Hey, everybody.
Hey. We're here because we've written and created together Our Street, which is permaculture for kids. And it originally comes from a story in Retro Suburbia that David's also been telling for many years before that. And
The Permaculture Action Cards. So a new card deck in collaboration between Formidable Vegetable and myself. This is born out of wanting to give kids some sort of hope for the future. So it's a series of actions. It contains David's permaculture ethics. So earth care, people care and fair share. There's also 12 cards that show permaculture principles and a whole bunch of illustrations. So you can see there's a kid reading to somebody who's a bit older. What have we got? Somebody there looking at the soil. Some kids making some stuff out of recycled things. And the back of each card actually has some lyrics or some really helpful phrases for teaching sustainability. The card deck also comes with a poster, which you might be able to see behind us, but a bit smaller than this version, and a booklet that shows you how to use them. So there are loads of games and activities, fun things that you can do in the classroom, at home, or even with adults. I teach adults permaculture and they love these cards.
And of course, that's part of the deep thinking behind all the permaculture strategies that are in everything we do. But the translation of that through my Aussie Street story that I've been telling for decades now about how we can survive and thrive through the challenges of the future at home and in our local communities. And that Aussie Street story was always from the point of view of the big people, the adults in the street, but the kids were all there. And in a lot of ways, of course, it was memories of being kids in suburbia, in our street, that inspired that story. And that's now been translated from the point of view of the kids.
Yep, so we go through different eras. Basically, I took David's Aussie Street story and wrote from the kids' point of view, then collaborated with Brenna, who did the pictures, and also Richard Telford, who put it all together into this amazing finished artwork. And yeah, hope you love it. As Charlie was saying, it's turned out really nicely, colourful pictures, different eras.
It goes through the decades here.
Every so often you get a plan view of these 4 different houses, 5 once there's infill of how these go through the decades. So there's a lot in there. I'm expecting people will be reading it 2 or 3 times before they find all the bits and pieces.
What are some of the cool things that they end up doing at the end, Beck?
By the end, it's pretty cool. We end in 2029 with Kikipi, who has 4 houses she can visit without ever having to go out and round or through a gate because there's no fences between any of them. And she can help out a whole lot of different adults or play with the baby, gardening. She can hide in her little orchard if she wants to, or she can be sociable.
Bit of a cameo on this page. Hang on, hang on.
Oh, formidable vegetable.
Speaking of which, Charlie's back.
Well, hi. Where are you guys going?
We're making way
Get
for
off.
you.
Thanks so much, guys. And yeah, it really is a fantastic read. We're going to actually dive in a little bit deeper and go through some of the eras because, like Beck mentioned, the book starts, well, sort of pre-colonial era, really, before this neighbourhood existed. And it moves through the decades. And, a lot of things have happened in the decades that colonial Australia has been a thing. And so we're going to talk through with some of the experts perhaps of the decades to see if we can get a bit more of a picture of what was happening on their street growing up. And the first person I'd like to have a chat with is our expert from the 1950s sort of era, and that's our publisher, Sue Dennett.
Good morning.
How you going?
Hi, I'm great. How are you kids all out there? I just wanted to tell you a little bit about what it was like for me growing up in my street. I remember the first house that I remember was when I was about 4. We used to move around a lot and change towns. We were always in country towns because my dad worked in the bank. And so every few years he would get a transfer and we'd have to move again. So the first house I lived in was actually in Olive Street, Albury, and it was a house that we got from the bank, and it was a share house with another family, but it was divided into 2. And we didn't really have anything much to do with the people next door, but I do remember the lady next door ran over my brother's toy car in the driveway. Oh, no. And we were very upset about that. And we thought she did it on purpose. We didn't really know. But out the back was a big garden, but because it was sort of a rented house where people would come and go all the time, nobody took care of the garden, but there were grapevines that we could sort of crawl in under, and we'd play cowboys and Indians out there. And actually one day, me and my friend, my brother, who's 2 years older than me, we decided we'd hold up the bank where my dad worked, and it was just down the road, a couple of blocks away. So off we went in our undies, because it was a very hot day, with our bows and arrows. We'd made our the Indian you used to make with your bit of glued on paper, and all you took feathers out the top, and we went off, had these bows and arrows, and we climbed up into the window at the bank, and my brother went inside, and he had a toy gun, and he went, "Stick 'em up!" And it just happened to be payday. And at that time, the pay was not electronic. You had the pay in the envelopes, and there was a gun on the desk in case robbers came. And so my dad was the teller there, and he was handing out the money. And he was actually, after the war, he was a bit of a nervous wreck. So when the kids came in, he just fell to bits, really. And he jumped up and ran out and chased us home. And the bank fell to bits that day.
Wow.
Anyway.
I can't imagine anyone getting away with that in any era other than the 50s.
No, absolutely. But then we moved after, I think it was about a year and a half. My parents got a loan from the bank, and we built a house up in East Albury, just near the East Albury Hill. And we'd go up the hill and we'd build up cubbies and have billy tea. You'd light your fire and put your billy there. And we thought billy tea was you picked a few eucalypt leaves and you drank that. And we were all trying to, put on a brave face to drink this disgusting stuff that just about turned your mouth inside out. And then there were other gangs around, and they burnt our cubby, but we couldn't get theirs because theirs was built in a tree, and we didn't know how they got up there. Wow. But in the holidays, we'd also go up to my grandma's place up at Avoca Beach in New South Wales. And we'd sometimes go fishing, which was great, but we'd spend all the time at the beach, which was really good. They had trees to climb, the beachfront was full of Norfolk Island pines, and then you'd spend all day at the beach. And our friends at the post office, I remember one day, my dad was taking us round to the beach, and we were impatient because he'd visit his friends at the post office, Laura and Dick. And he was chattering away to Dick there, and we're going, Dad, and yeah, just a minute, as parents always do. It's so boring. They stand there talking all the time. So my brother and I kind of went, ready, set, go, and we pulled his pants down.
Those were simpler times.
Very
simpler times. Look, I think we've just had our minds blown by what life was like in your street. Let's move on now to the 60s,
yes,
where David was growing up. I don't know if anyone can top that story. There's no cops and robbers in this book, but Sue Dennett, everybody. That was fantastic. Now,
great
David,
stories.
I suppose your street growing up would have been pretty formative in the permaculture sort of inception. Can you talk us a bit through your experience?
Yeah, well, growing up in Western Australia in the 50s and 60s, our house started off with the usual septic tank where the toilet waste all went into a big pit in sandy country, and you had to have the bloke come and clean it out every so often. And when I was about 10, the authorities put the sewer on, and that meant a big trench had to be dug down the back of everyone's backyard. And because it's sandy soil, they had to shore it up with timber, like in the Aussie Street Story, and it was really deep. It was about 3.5, 4 metres deep.
Wow.
And when the workers went away, we thought that was pretty interesting. So we would get in the trench and run along and come up in different people's backyards, and you could see what all the backyards of people you didn't know.
Wow.
And so that's what the story is actually based on, my experience. But it was really interesting because they dug that trench by hand with shovels. And I remember the guys would shovel up with a long-handled shovel onto a platform. Of course, it was all sided with timber because it's sand, it'd fall in without that. And then another guy would shovel off the platform up to the top. And they dug all the sewerage without machinery.
So that was before fossil fuels just really took off.
Oh, well, you had machines for really big stuff that blokes couldn't do, but, you just got in and did it. I mean, obviously, where they hit the limestone caprock, they'd get in a jackhammer or something, but...
what was the neighbour's response to you popping up in their backyard out of the blue?
Well, I don't remember whether we ever had a sort of like a conflict like the little in the story, but I remember there was some, like, who are you,
What are you doing in my yard? Fantastic. Well, thank you on behalf of everyone who's ever done permaculture for kind of synthesising this movement, and this is obviously the next sort of synthesis again, isn't it? This Our Street book.
Yeah, and of course a lot of the next things in the story in the 70s were when a lot of the ideas of permaculture were starting to come into action. So moving on to the 70s, we better hear from someone who has more of a formative years experience there. Beck Lowe, would you please make your way to the hot seat? Here we're moving on to the 1970s, and would you like to talk us through?
Yeah, so I grew up in the 70s and 80s, bit of a cross-decade person, and we didn't get grassroots, but we actually had some friends who lived in the Dandenongs and kept goats and had grassroots, and I just thought grassroots was one of the coolest things ever. We lived in a very boring neighbourhood, and our creeks looked like this. This is my memory of Elster Creek in Garden Vale in southeast Melbourne.
So this is now the 80s.
This is now the
80s.
Right. And yeah, I just had that sense of how sad it was that this, what was obviously once a beautiful creek, was just cemented over, and I always found that so depressing. But there was one little ray of sunshine. It was a weird little suburb, but we did keep chooks in the 80s. So many people know Chadstone Shopping Centre, big, huge, sprawling, horrible place with lots and lots of shops. There used to be, back when it was much smaller, but it was still a shopping centre, a little college next to it with a little bit of green space. And my mum happened to work at that college, and we decided that we'd keep chooks there in that little space in the old farm in the college. So even though my neighbourhood looked quite like this, we did actually manage to keep chickens.
There was
through
still
most
the commons.
Of the 80s. There was still
the
just
commons
a
still
tiny
existed.
bit, yes.
Wow. That's fantastic. So you can see, if you've just joined us, we're launching Our Street, which is the children's permaculture book based on David Holmgren's Retro Suburbia. And Beck Lowe and David have co-written this book for kids to kind of, capture the imagination of what it was like growing up in an Australian suburb from the 1950s until the future, which hasn't happened yet. We're launching this along with the permaculture action cards, and feel free to jump on and grab yourself a copy. They're up at the Holmgren store and at permacultureprinciples.com.
And the first book, 100 sold at the launch, yet it's signed by David and Brenna and I. Oh,
that's not a signed copy. But if you want a signed copy, jump on and grab one now, because there's only 100. and they're gonna be snapped up fast, I reckon. Yep. Beck, thanks so much for this beautiful contribution to permaculture and to life in general, especially for those living in suburbs who need a new way to imagine what has been and what can be in the future. So we're going to move on to the next era now, which is the 90s. And that's where our wonderful illustrator comes in, Brenna Quinlan.
Hey everyone.
This is looking a little bit bleaker than the 50s to the 80s. What was your experience growing up in suburbia in the 90s?
Yeah, so I actually grew up in the burbs in Wollongong in New South Wales with my 2 brothers and my cousins. And we'd still run about and get up to mischief, but we'd hear stories of how people, generations before, were able to run free, go through the bush, go exploring, get up to mischief like Dave and Sue were talking about. And really all we were allowed to do was go over to the park, which was just a huge empty block with a Girl Scout hall in the middle and 1 tree. We loved that tree to bits, but it was all that we had. We didn't have veggies in our yard. I don't know anybody that had a vegetable patch, but everyone I knew had TV. We all had video games, and we all really wanted the next coolest toys. We also, instead of running about all day, started becoming more like couch potatoes. And when our parents would let us watch TV, we'd be there, normally Saturday mornings. And so to get our exercise, we'd have to go play cricket on Saturday mornings or maybe do a bit of soccer. Check it out in the next spread. This girl Kate here is sitting under the only tree that she has access to, and she gets driven to cricket practice every Saturday morning as well. It was wanting to be outside more, but maybe not being able to because people were starting to think about kids roaming the streets as being more of a dangerous thing. But then we still didn't have much going on at home to entertain us.
And so was your house an old house, or was it? You can see here that the map of the street really starts to change over the years. It goes from having veggie gardens and chickens in the 50s to being really more about the classic suburbia that you think of nowadays. What was yours like?
Ours was one of those houses that was built around the 50s, and so we were trying to maintain it and keep the roof from leaking. But there were houses down the street that had been knocked down and a new brick veneer house had been built in with a big driveway. Some blocks that had a big yard out the back would actually put an extra house in the back instead of the backyard, which means a lot of concrete and not many places for the kids to play. That's what Luke in this first 90s spread is talking about. He doesn't have much to do, but he goes and looks at the works going on next door every afternoon when he gets home from school.
Yeah, I remember that a bit from around my grandparents' place. You know, lots of concreting and lots of builders putting up new houses everywhere. And so, you know, this part of the book is a bit of a dark night of the soul as far as permaculture is concerned.
We turned out all right.
but the rest of the book is where the really exciting stuff happens. And we're gonna kind of just leave this for you to discover if you want to get yourselves a copy. But basically, this street goes from being, you know, sort of urban infill, really kind of concreting over the wild places, back to a bit more of a retro suburban community where people start learning about permaculture, start growing their own food, getting chickens, and in one part actually pushing down the fence between the 2 houses, which changes not only the physical landscape but the social dynamic.
And it starts out with just 1 family, then it's 2, and by the end we see that there are all kinds of living arrangements there, and most people are really in the spirit of retro suburbia. So you can take that as a take home from this talk today and from the book, that by changing things in your household, things can actually ripple out and help to change other people. Who have we got here?
Kikipi, the last
Kikipi.
spread.
Oh, she's the lucky one of the book, my goodness. By the time you get to this part, she's got all sorts of things going on. She's learning ukulele. She's friends with almost everybody in the street. We see that the kids in the 50s knew almost everyone there. By the 90s, they don't even really know their neighbours. But it's possible, again, to get to know everybody, especially for the kids, and they can have free reign of the whole street. They can feel safe again because we know our neighbours. So these sorts of patterns and themes are what we're talking about in our street.
So you can see she can wander. There's a little path of all the houses. She wanders back and forth between meeting all the neighbours and doing different things.
There's veggie patches up here. There's goats here, which we saw back in the 50s. They disappeared for a few decades. And now in this era, they're making a comeback in the suburbs, which is really cool. And I know people, and I'm sure you do too. We've got mutual friends that have goats in the suburbs, that have veggie patches in their front lawn, that have fruit trees growing out on the verge instead of the ones that were planted by council. All these things have been tried and tested. We've got great friends that do all of these adaptations, and you can read more about them in Retro Suburbia if you want to.
So thanks heaps, Brenna. That's just a beautiful, succinct kind of wrap up for you of our street. And it really is that journey from a bit of a colonised, bland landscape into a more connected reclaiming of the commons that permaculture really strives to achieve. And this helps us to imagine what a future might look like where that can happen. So I hope you can get your hands on a copy and start imagining what can happen in your street. You know, it could be a communal pizza oven in the street. It could be a tea station on the corner. It could be a mural painted on the road. It could be composting dunnies. That's one of my favourite. And speaking of which, I don't know, a few kids out there might have heard the song by Formidable Vegetable about composting dunnies, but what do you reckon? Should we go give it a burl?
I think that's an excellent idea, Charlie.
All right, we've got a certified kid saying yay in the background, so I reckon we should take off and give you another song. Stick around, we've got more coming up next.
We're back.
We're back.
Formidable Vegetable here on the tea house veranda, and Mel Webb looks like he's about to eat soup.
That's right. I got a couple of bowls here, as in one bowl and another bowl.
That's the smallest bowl. Those bowls are so small they almost look like spoons.
Well, that's right, because they are, Charlie.
What on earth are you doing with 2 spoons, Mel?
Well, I was asked to play spoons for another gig, and then I thought, well, hang on a sec. This was 2 weeks ago, so I've spent 2 weeks learning how to play.
2 weeks of spoon practice.
So
There's all sorts of things you can do with spoons.
So if you don't have a musical instrument lying around the house, this is just one thing you can pick up and
Exactly.
play. What else do you pick up and play when you don't have an instrument lying around the
My
house?
face. So for this song, I'm going to use my farty mouth because it's appropriate to the song, Charlie.
Oh, it might just be. I think maybe some of you know which song we're talking about, but in this song we're going to do a bit of a colon response, aren't
That's
we?
right, with our farty sounds. Because you can do farty mouth as well, can't
Yeah,
you?
not as well as you, but if we trade farty mouth,
Well,
sounds
I think colon response sounds good.
yeah, okay. Kind of like a double bass,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
with your double face.
Well, you got 2 lips.
That's true. Well, let's give it a go. This song is called Dad's Dunny. My dad's dunny doesn't flush. My dad's dunny doesn't flush. My dad's dunny now, you might think it's funny, but my dad's dunny doesn't flush. Well, 'cause my dad's dunny's full of dirt, but it's never activated smelly red alert. Don't worry about the germs, 'cause they're eaten by the worms. Yeah, 'cause my dad's dunny's full of dirt. Yeah, 'cause my dad's dunny doesn't flush. My dad's dunny doesn't flush. My dad's dunny now, you might think it's funny, but my dad's dunny doesn't flush. Right, what you got? Hey, my dad's dunny grows fruit trees. How does it do that? Breaking down your business so there's no chance of disease. It's safer and it's clean to turn brown into green. That's why my dad's dunny grows fruit trees. 'Cause my dad's dunny doesn't flush. Yeah, my dad's dunny doesn't flush. Well, my dad's dunny now, you might think it's funny, but my dad's dunny doesn't flush. Now he never needs a plumber, 'cause the dunny's never blocked. Fertilizer for the garden, well, the pile is always stocked. Just chuck some sawdust on your number ones and number twos, then sit back and admire all the water you don't use, 'cause my dad's dunny doesn't flush. Oh no, my dad's dunny doesn't flush. Now my dad's dunny, well, you might think it's funny, but my dad's dunny doesn't flush. Well, my dad's dunny doesn't flush. I said my dad's dunny doesn't flush. Wait.
Hey!
Thank you. We'll be back.
Hi everybody, so we're going to learn how to draw one of my cartoon characters. As an artist I have two styles. One of them you can see in our street. So this is a more realistic style, and the other style you can see in the action cards. It's a more cartoony style, which I love because it's so expressive and it's really fun. So this is the style we're going to focus on today. What you'll need is a pen or a pencil and a piece of paper. Grab your paper, and in the middle you're going to draw a big circle. Inside it we're going to write illustrations with Brenner. Now, if you're not into writing, that's totally fine. I'm going to write things here so that we can use this as a reference later on. You can just participate in the drawings if you want. So in the top left-hand corner of your page, what we're going to do is learn about the visual alphabet. This is just a fancy way of saying there are certain shapes and symbols that can help us out, like letters, that when we put together to make words, we can put these shapes and symbols together to make images. So what am I talking about? Well, up in this part of your page, I'd like you to draw a dot, then draw a line, then draw an arc. These are three of our visual letters. Underneath the dot, we're going to draw 4 lines, which makes a square or a rectangle. We're going to draw 2 arcs, which makes us a circle, and 2 lines and an arc, which makes us a teardrop. Now, with these 6 symbols, with these 6 letters of the visual alphabet, we can draw almost anything. So what do I mean? Well, let's take one of these images. I love these little tree saplings here. These 2 people are about to plant a tree. So let's try drawing one of these. What we need is a line, a line, a line, and a line to make a rectangle. Then we draw another line and our drops. Line, line, arc, line, line, arc, and here we have it. Wow, that's a great little sapling. So, people aren't just made out of lines and arcs, are they? Well, they kind of are, but they have faces that have expressions. So, for a quick look at faces, let's have a go here. Faces. In this part of your page, I'd like you to draw 3 circles. Doesn't matter if they're not perfect. Faces have a thing called proportions, which basically means if we draw a line in the center of our 3 circles to cut them in half, we place the parts of the face, the nose, the mouth, the eyes, around that line so that it looks right. So in my characters, I put my eyes just on top of that line. Same with the nose and the ears. So we'll do that for all 3. And then these people are missing something, aren't they? The mouth and the eyebrows are what give people their expression. So with these last elements, we can play around. Let's do some eyebrows that are going up and a mouth that's an arc, a bit like a smile. All right. What if we do our eyebrows the other way around? So a line, line going down and an arc upside down. Ooh, they're looking a bit grumpy. How about with this third one we do line, line, and a dot? Ooh, pensive. So with our simple visual alphabet, we can create so many different expressions. I'll do some lines at the top for hair, some wavy lines here for this person, and some arcs for this person. That's pretty punk, I love that. Cool. So let's combine our visual alphabet and our faces into a character. Got our characters here. We're going to draw a circle. And you can draw this in pencil and go over it in pen later on when you're getting a bit more confident. We're going to draw line, 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 line to make a rectangle. And circle, circle for the feet. Underneath we're going to draw the ground. It's always important to have a line for the ground or our character would be floating. And then I would like my character to be looking up like this. So the line that divides the face is going to be slanted. 1, 2, dots for the eyes, and I'll do a big arc for the mouth. Then for arms, 1 line and a dot, 1 line and a dot. And if you want to make them a bit more expressive, like I have in my characters, draw a second line to make them look like a triangle. A line across for a belt or a shirt. And then line, 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 line for hair. So you can see how we get from our visual alphabet through to expressive faces, and we can make a character. I hope this has given you a few ideas for how to make your own characters, play around with it, add colours, use ears, use noses or not, and find out what works for you. Thanks for coming along.
Thanks, Brenna. How awesome was that? Get to learn how to draw your own little permaculture Greebly character, which of course feature on the new permaculture action cards that we're also launching along with the Our Street book. This is my favourite one. It's someone sitting on a compost dunny. How good's that? And so, you know, these cards are not only beautiful sort of little cards to just have lying around, they're actually pretty functional as teaching tools. And we've got a little booklet that go with it with games and the permaculture ethics and principles sort of to show you how to use them in a classroom or at home school or wherever you want to learn about permaculture. And you can match words and pictures and play all kinds of little interactive games to get kids and adults thinking about these ethics and principles. And it comes with this poster as well, you know, slightly smaller. So, you know, plenty of stuff there. We're going to get back to our street. In fact, we're going to your street now because Sue Dennett, our wonderful publisher here at Melliodora, has put it out there to a bunch of you to tell us about your street. Do you want to give us a little bit of a spiel about that?
Yeah, we asked a lot of kids from around Australia to send us in a little video of their street and what might be going on there. And we can show you now. There are 2 or 3 videos that we can give you an example of, and then afterwards I'll tell you which is my favourite one.
Cool, I'm excited. Are you ready to have a look? Let's see what they've got.
Hi, my name's Theo and we live on Kincaid Lane, and I'd like to show you all of our pets around the street.
So who's this, guys?
Millie.
And what's Millie?
A rabbit. Hi, my name's Woody, and there's so many things I love about our street, but one of them is this cherry palm tree at the end of our street, and I love to pick cherry palms when they're ripe and they're out like that. Bye.
I'm Delilah and this is Banjo, and I love our street because we have a very big veggie patch and we have neighbours that give us bread and cookies, and in trade we give them some of our chicken eggs.
Wow, beautiful to see what's happening on your street. Sue, that was a beautiful little window into what's happening in retro suburbia around Australia. Now, there was a few prizes offered for these, weren't there? Have you decided on your favourite one out of our entries?
Indeed, I have. It was the last one we saw, I think. Took my fancy. And you know, for you, we have a copy of Our Street, we've got a copy of the card, and Grow Do It CD. So we'll be sending that off to you very soon. I hope you love them as much as I do.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thanks so much for sending in all your beautiful entries. It's great to see what's actually happening with kids around Australia doing this stuff. And hopefully this book gives you even more ideas. And these cards too, if you want to get a copy of any of them. We've got the links up in the live stream and we'll show them again at the end. But basically, head to retrosuburbia.com if you want to find out, or the Holmgren store. We'll put the links up and you can grab yourself some. The first 100 copies of Our Street are actually signed by the authors and Brenna, the illustrator. So that's a pretty special little addition to any sort of gift hamper if you're thinking about that sort of thing. But anyway, I think we have a few thanks to give. There's a lot of effort gone into something like this, and Sue, you've been here for the whole process. Do you want to talk us through just how much goes into a book like this?
Well, it takes a long time, but it's a very nice process. It's, as Brenna explained before, you take a story that's written by one person, and that story then is taken by another person and then written into a different little story of the children in the streets when they were growing up, etc. And then along comes the illustrator, and then the illustrator has to go backwards and forwards because they mightn't get the details quite right this time. And then we've got David starts off, and then in comes Beck, and then...
So hang on. Let's get him here in real life, shall we? Who have we got? Who should we...
But I'll thank them in a minute.
Who's this guy?
This is David. So this is David who wrote the original Retro Suburbia book. And there's a story in there called Aussie Street, as we've mentioned before. And then along came Beck and did the little write-up of the children's story. And then along came Brenna, who did then the illustrations. And there was the backwards and the forwards between all these people. And then in came Richard.
Yay!
And Richard, I can remember some days we'd go on and we'd be looking at the different things and then trying to get all the words and the pictures to sit on the page really nicely, and to tweak some of the illustrations. Go back to Brenna, and Brenna would say, well, do you want it like this? Or what was the idea? I thought it was so-and-so. Oh, the shoes were not quite right, or something like that.
The shoes.
There's a lot of detail in this book.
There's lots and lots of things like that. It's a bit like a film set. You know, you've got to get the details right. So if you look at all these things, there's a challenge for you. If you can show me this is for the parents, kids, we've done pretty well for you guys. Parents, if you can find any details in there that you think are not accurate, we'll recompense you by a little reward.
That's the guarantee of Melliodora.
Where did the book get produced?
Where, of course, got produced in Australia. Everybody needs a job in Australia, and we like to support our own industries, so we try and get paper from Australia, which is becoming, unfortunately, more difficult. And so it was actually printed in Melbourne. And that's a very big thing for us too, to make sure that we are supporting not only our local talent, but also the people who produce this physically in paper form.
And when the books get sent out, when people buy them, where does that come from?
Well, they all get delivered to Seymour, to the warehouse, and up to Permaculture Principles, to Richard and Oliver Holmgren, and they get sent out from the warehouse there.
So now, this is like one big happy family, really, isn't it?
Very incestuous, I would say. Anyway, the other people who are involved with this, there are other people behind the scenes, of course, and Meg.
Meg!
Who works in the office, and there's Carly. And there's Osty. And we've got Will behind the scenes here today. And we've got the band. Charlie and Kylie and Mal. And who else have I forgotten?
I'd like to acknowledge all those people who read various iterations of this. It's one of these really cool things about working with a group where everyone's a different age. As Sue said, we keep spotting different things in different eras that were problematic. And, you know, when we moved the 80s year slightly from, I can't remember what it was, to 86 or 83, we suddenly, I think it was Osty, spotted the fact that we've totally blown out our timeline for when videos were there, for instance, so everything had to change. And this sort of thing was happening constantly, so can't acknowledge every single person who's given us that sort of feedback, but I'd love to acknowledge that there are so many people out there who either gave us a big reread and lots of comments, or just the odd little shoe comment or video comment or something else. It's been a real collaboration between the whole Retro Suburbia community, I think, in many ways.
Yeah, we are a great community, and I think that's our strength, that we have each other to help us and support us in good times and in bad.
And I'd like to just put in a little word for my mum and dad for doing editing, and my partners Pete and Catherine for being totally supportive. I think Brenna's mum and dad were pretty cool in those pictures too.
And also thanks to the partners who were there at home supporting the people doing the work. Mine happens to be here right now. I equally support him while he does
Strange,
stuff.
mine is here too.
and Rich's partner, Keely, as well, right?
Yeah.
She's behind the scenes here today, and those people working behind the scenes are the most important, providing more work than those who actually do any job. So yeah, big shout out to all those people filling those roles.
And that's the beautiful thing about this book, is it's just been such a process that I've watched through the Melliodorans, which, you know, many of us live together here at the physical place of Melliodora, but you're also, you know, very much a community, and acknowledging those connections, as well as the connections, you know, the people, even though they're fictional in this book, acknowledging the people right through the ages, from pre-colonial times, the Indigenous people, through to now, who've given us these ideas that have made it into this book as a way for us to move forward. And to me, it sort of symbolises the permaculture principle, produce no waste, because we've got all these ideas through history, and these crew have just beautifully synthesised it into a way that we can recycle, but reimagine what it can look like into the future. So thank you so much on behalf of everyone who's going to read this book and who's going to love it, and every kid for the future of suburbia who are going to be looking back and being like, you know, this is where I got the inspiration from. So good on you guys. And thanks everyone for joining us. I think it's time for one more song. What do you reckon?
Yeah.
All right. Well, in the spirit of waste, we'll take you back to Formidable Vegetable. How's it going with Formidable Vegetable? Thanks so much for having us. This is our final song, No Such Thing as Waste. 1, 2, 3, 4.
When I was a little kid, I liked to catch the rain, while my friends around the town let it flow right down the drain. But our tiny house in the trees had one thing that we drank, every drop that we had saved in our rainwater tank. 'Cause there's no such thing as waste, only stuff in the wrong place. I said there's no such thing as waste, better save it just in case. Well, I moved to the city, rented a house on my way to buy a bed. But I saw one lying on the side of the road, so I took that one instead. And I also found a fridge, a couch, and a big old sewing machine in the biggest pile of thrown out stuff that I had ever seen. But there's no such thing as waste, oh no, only stuff in the wrong place, yeah. No, there's no such thing as waste when we treasure every trace. Well, we gotta reduce, reuse, repair, then renew. I said refuse, reduce, renew, repair, then renew. Well, you can get cool things out of garbage bins, you can compost every crumb, save all the seeds, eat garden weeds, and give the rest back to your mum. It's time we thunk about all our junk to keep our planet clean. And that W word is so absurd in a world of blue and green. 'Cause there's no such thing as waste, oh no, only stuff in the wrong place, yeah. That's right, there's no such thing as waste, that whole idea should be replaced, yeah. Well, there's no such thing as waste, oh, only stuff in the wrong place. I said there's no such thing as waste, only opportunity to be embraced. Yeah. Thank you very much. We'll see you later. We've been Formidable Vegetable. Check out our tunes at formidablevegetable.com and don't forget to grab yourself a copy of Our Street. We'll catch you next time.
See ya.
Woo! Oh, great. Thanks, Formidable Vegetable. If you want to buy a copy of either of these, head to retrosuburbia.com.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say this is our real shared history and the way we imagine a future that's both realistic and fun. So I think both for adults and kids, this is the stories we need to share. So thank you for doing it.
And don't forget, there's 100 signed copies if you're ordering them at the launch from retrosuburbia.com.
So our websites are to buy the book and to buy the card deck, head to retrosuburbia.com. If you loved Faux Veg, Formidable Vegetable, the Permaculture Band, they've got a website, formidableveg.com.au. I've got a website, brennaquinlan.com, where you can also buy all of this stuff. They're also available through the Permaculture Principles website. And grow, do it. That's what happens when Formidable Vegetable and Brenna Quinlan get together. It's our Permaculture Sustainability Kids Education group, and we have a Facebook group and a website as well. Yep. Retrosuburbia.com's got all the info you need. Great Facebook group. We'll see you there, and we love when you share your stories. So hit us up. Share some photos. If you're inspired by the kids' videos, we'd love to see more of them. If you get the book and you're enjoying it, send us a picture. There's a great conversation going on that group, and it's really been super popular and helpful in bringing the movement forward.
They make great presents for those of you who buy presents at this time of year. Okay. Thanks everybody.
Thanks for joining us.
It's a beautiful day out in the yard. We're gonna get